Okay, we're gonna get started. I think most people are in now. I hope they are. If you didn't see the agenda, I will repeat it. A couple of highlights not included in the agenda are that more than likely we will not have a meeting unless something comes up special next week. We will have a July 14th meeting, which I expect will be a fairly large meeting, in that it will be our monthly meeting. We will need to cover a few other things, including some letters that I have sent on behalf of the ICB to the town of Southold relative to the rec path and the sidewalks and our neighborhood liaison position. Those letters will be reported on, as well as we will have hopefully an update on the rec path from John McGillian, and we will have an update from Louisa or myself on the sidewalks. So those will all be in 2 weeks. I think we'll have some more definitive information at that time. This meeting will be predominantly focused on COVID-19 and the IHP input. We will be covering the census and the symptom tracker. We will be covering the recent New York State guidance, which, while referred to as guidance, does have some teeth in it, in the fact that it does have the ability to levy fines. We will acknowledge, I think, more than once that Watch Hill, Misquamicut Club in Watch Hill, has some significant issues with numbers of patients. And so that's a warning to us, I think, to be prepared that if we're not careful. And we also are going to talk about a program to address, for lack of a better word, the older teens, the 17, 18, 19-year-olds, who we may have not directed communication to as well as we could have, and who may have been included in their parents' sort of census, but are interested, we've learned, in having their own email sent to them, and they're doing their own symptom tracking. On the high level, we have 1,200 registered people in the census. That includes people that are not on the island yet, by the way. That includes people like myself who have registered in advance. We have been sending out symptom checkers, about 100 more each week. So we have 885 emails went out this week. We're getting about a 72% response rate, all of which I think are very good. I think VJAL has a little bit more definitive data for those of you interested in the data. And so I am going to, as step one, turn it over to he and the IHP team to speak to the census efforts, the efforts we're going to have at the ferry boat over the next couple of days with July 4th weekend coming up, and the symptom tracker. So Vijay, you're there, right? I hope.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'm just going to share the data here. Oh, I need to be a host.
Mayor, can you make Vijay a host, please?
Okay, let me share this. So it's a pretty simple, I just pulled up the numbers from the symptom tracking. So we had an initial fear when we had started sending out the symptom tracking that the numbers were going down. So it was coming around somewhere around 70. I think it was 69, and then it went to 67, and then 65. So we were concerned on the first 3 days, but it's gone up now to about 72, 73. And actually the last one that came out, I just looked at the numbers. We have 630 I think 634 responses, and that's out of 800 people that have been sent out the symptom tracker. So actually, there is a lot of people that are actually filling this out, and it looks pretty good. The only problem is that I'm not sure we're capturing the full island. I think everybody that's doing it is doing it, which is great. But I think we need to have more people enrolled in the census, and we need to have more people getting these symptom tracking emails. So I think one of the big pushes that we're trying to do is trying to get some of the younger people who are on the island to sign up to the census and to get these symptom tracking emails as well. So I think one of the things we're asking is to ask for everybody to if anybody knows anybody that's on the island that might not have filled out the census, that would be great. So that's what I got on. By the way, there's a mosquito flying around here. That's what I got on the symptom tracking and the census. So we have about 12,000 people that have signed up.
Not 12,000.
1,200 people that have signed up for the census. So it's pretty good. We need to get maybe, I would say, about 800 more, which I think would be a really good representation. So we're almost there.
Who's going to speak about our Instagram efforts relative to the teenagers? Is that going to be, is that Nick or Mecky? Oops.
Yeah, so we have put together a little team of students that are working on an Instagram page and are working on outreach to the younger community. So that is taking form now. We're also going to produce flyers that we're going to hang up around town and at Hay Harbor and other places where the younger crowds kind of congregate. And we're going to specify that if people should fill out the census for themselves, or at least put their own email addresses in so that they can fill out the symptom tracker on their own. So that's kind of where we're at on the student side to try to get the 20-year-olds into the symptom tracker. But we've put together a team of kids in that age group who are really leading that at the moment.
And when do you expect to launch that?
That will be by the end of the week.
Great. So, and then for those grandparents on the call that have grandchildren there that are in the 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, their parents may have just included them without their email addresses on their census. And while this is a change and we're not going to demand it, for those people that we could get their emails and send them emails directly, we would like to be able to do that. So hold on one second. We got a whole bunch of people in the waiting room. So if you can just remind them that if they did sign up children or grandchildren that are active on email and they didn't put their emails down, we would like them to add their emails either by directly contacting Mecky or Nick or Amelia, or just refilling out and we'll call the database, redoing the census themselves.
Just to add to that, Willard, so if there's anyone else who needs to add their email addresses, you can contact symptom tracker at fiihp.net, and I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you.
Willard?
Yeah.
May I interrupt? A chat just came through indicating that apparently some people are finding the symptom tracker in their spam box.
Right.
And so I think I remember when I did it myself that there was a little warning there to make sure that the address is in your okay senders list, but I wonder if that could be repeated or reinforced in some way.
Yeah, it's tough. A lot of this is Google's back end of what it does with mailing. But I would encourage everybody to look in their spam. Or also there's a marketing tab that some people might have on their Google. And a lot of times they put anything that's coming from a marketing or a service like Constant Contact or MailChimp or anything. Sometimes they just automatically put it into marketing. So if anybody is finding that, you can go on and then you can select it to not be spam. There's like a little bar that's over there.
Let's get some posters out at the post office, at the market, at the ferry, and every other place we can think about that Vijay and Meki and Nick, to make sure that we tell them, check, if you've already filled out the census, check your spam folder. Make sure you've checked your spam folder. Make sure you've allowed the emails to come in. Let's hit that hard and often here in the first couple of weeks, because we don't need to have that problem. We're going to have enough trouble getting everybody to comply to have them, not get the email at all. So we will work on that, and let's get some. Let's even put it on Instagram to tell those kids that it might be in spam folders, and let's post it on the bulletin board if we can. That's a great point, Candy. Thank you. The next item is the New York State guidelines that came out, and there's been a lot of talk and noise about this. And the IHP and the ICB are not here to read the law, enforce the law, or interpret the law. What we can tell you is that we have provided on Fishnet the link to the law, to the publication that does say that it is guidance, that there are, thank you, Vijay, that it's guidance as to the fact that people coming from, I think it's 9 or 11 different states, need to quarantine themselves for 14 days. We don't know how they will enforce that, and we're not going to try to judge that. We just know that this is the request or the guidance from the state. We know, because we can read like everybody else can read on this, that they have put some meat on the bones here by providing a 800 number that allows people to report other people. And we also know that there is the ability for fines to be enforced. But we don't know any more than that, and we're not going to try to issue any judgment one way or another about that. But we do think that all of the organizations on the island need to know about that, and maybe there'll be clarity that comes up during this week on that. As I said, there is a link to that if you want to read it. It is on the Fishnet posting, so you can read it and make your own judgments on what it means. The other item is, so we can keep, if there's any rumors out there, is that as we understand it, there were 6 cases at the Misquamicut Club, which required 20 people to have to go into quarantine. The 6 cases were younger adults or older teens, and it has been an awakening for the club itself. And I had heard that there were 20 cases, and as far as we know, there are 6 cases, and 20 people were asked to go under quarantine. And we don't know much more than that unless something happened in the last 24 hours that would clarify that.
So Willard, if I may, so also in the chat to me, someone indicated that those cases arose from one party.
Correct.
Correct.
Another lesson.
Correct.
Willard, maybe you want to address it, but having heard that, I wonder about the club's policy to allow 2 golfers as guests. A member of Misquamicut came and played Fisher's Island today as a guest.
And that is interesting, Henry, because we were told that the reciprocal was...
It's not a reciprocal, it's just a person. Yeah.
Okay.
And the membership, as I understand it, a member can have 2 guests.
Dave Sugini, I saw you came on. I know you weren't planning to speak, but are you willing to make a comment about that?
I'd have to follow up with Dan Coven. I do know that there was some guests that came from the Musquamacut Club, but I don't know any of the actual particulars on that.
It wasn't a reciprocal. It was a guest who played with a member.
I believe that the member of the Fishers Island Club did ask Dan if it was all right to bring a guest from Musquamacut. And I think there was some conversation about whether this person had been tested. But
Okay.
the member did ask if he could bring the person over.
Well, that's good. I just still wonder if it's a good club policy.
And I also heard that Musquamacut closed for a week. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, Dave, maybe at the next meeting, you guys could give us a little update on that, because we've had, not only is there Henry's question as to whether it's a good policy or not, but we've had, we want to keep the rumors to a minimum, and we have had a number of people ask.
I think at a minimum, Dave, you're good friends with the manager of Musquamacut. You should just call him and get the facts.
Exactly. I can reach out to Phil.
Great. Okay, Chris Ingram, please tell me you're there.
I'm here.
Okay, so one of the questions that was posed to us, and I think it's a very good question, was that many of the year-rounders work in the summer for more than one seasonal family, and the income that they make for the summer is important to their yearly income. And we haven't really spoken about what protocols they should be following, the same as or different from anybody else. And so, Chris, could you speak to that?
So what I'm going to say about that is that I think that probably for each individual, their situation is rather unique. And so I don't think I can speak in general terms to that. But what I would encourage anybody who has a question as to how they should be comporting themselves, just to simply call me and we can work out a strategy that works best for you.
Okay, thanks very much. And Candy, you'll make sure that message gets communicated to the year-round community as well.
Yes, yes.
And I think it's for the summer people that are there, I think it's important that they understand that many of these people need to work or are working for multiple families, and that they do whatever social distancing that they think is important to each of them. And I think we talked about that maybe a month ago or so as well, that it's incumbent on the employer as well as the employee to handle this correctly. And then the other topic that I know is on a lot of people's mind is that there is already a significant use of the beaches on Fishers Island, and some of our beaches are private and some of our beaches are not. But I think that, as we've said before, that it's up to we hope that people will follow the protocols we stated. To the degree they don't follow protocols, we hope others will remind them that they should. And to the degree that there will be times when people aren't, it's up to the part of the population that is most at risk to make sure that they stay away from that group, and in order to stay healthy. And so I think that we need to be, as citizens on the island, we need to be making sure that we're doing our job in terms of protecting the people from us. We're doing our job in terms of protecting ourselves, and we're reminding others that these are the protocols and that we would hope that they would abide by them. Whether it's walking into one of the stores that requires a mask and making sure you put on a mask, or whether it's having parties on the beach of greater than 10 people. And I don't think that there's much more that can be said about that, but certainly it's on everybody's mind.
Willard,
Yeah.
Willard, this is Paul Vartanian. We're on Isabella Beach. And last weekend, both days, there was approximately 200 people on it. There was no separation there. A lot of kids, some people came from the mainland because their beaches were closed over in Connecticut and anchored off. They are private beaches, and obviously we can't walk on them when that's going on. And it was a real party each day. And we're worried that the people here on Isabella are worried that this is going to happen over the 4th of July. Now, I think that FIDCO owns the beaches here. We own down to the edge, and they own like 50 feet right to the beaches. And I think FIDCO is letting these people in because you have a pass. So perhaps, as they did in Costa Rica, or as they did in Florida at one time, on special holidays, the beaches should be closed, at least the private beaches, especially if it endangers the whole island. What's your thoughts on that?
Could I just add that I second completely on Paul's neighbor, Paul's comment. I've heard from some friends who live here year-round that they went to Isabella and it was so crowded and people were acting with such disregard to social distancing that they felt uncomfortable and they left. These were people who went with a FIDCO pass. So I wonder also whether there is some way that IHP FIDCO can discourage this highly dense occupation of the beach.
Well, I think it's something that maybe the concerned community members should bring up as a group to FIDCO. I know that there's no jurisdiction past the mean high tide mark, so that anybody can come, as they do on the 8th hole of the club golf course. Anybody can bring their boat up and be on the beach, private or not, as long as they're below the mean high tide mark, which I'm sure they're not. But and then there's the question of how do you enforce it. But I think it's something that, as members of FIDCO and homeowners on the East End, that maybe you can bring up to the board of FIDCO and see if there's additional ways that they might be able to limit the number of people there.
The coming proximity of the July 4th weekend makes Paul's remarks particularly urgent. And it may be that some restrictive action would take some time. Is there not some way that just a discouraging word could be sent out, and that at least to indicate that the people in charge here and responsible have observed this situation and consider that it is it's not just a matter for the neighbors of the beach, it is a matter for the community as a whole.
I think that, George, as I said before, I think that that the group can certainly ask FIDCO to be maybe more diligent at the gate and making sure that the only people coming in are people that have Vidco stickers. Number one, I think that they can probably stop walkers or bikers that don't have passes from maybe going down to the beach. I think that maybe the group could ask Vidco if they could put up signs that say it's a private beach, do not pass the high tide mark. But other than that, people coming in by boat and anchoring and swimming into the beach, I don't think that there's any authority to do anything about that.
Is there nobody on this call that's on the FIDCO board that could help here?
I don't think there are. I think, Susie, that's a great question, and I don't think there is.
It's Audrey.
Audrey?
Yep. Audrey, I'm on the board. And the only thing that I know, and I'm not privy to a lot of these conversations, obviously, but I do know that Mimi did talk to the trooper who has agreed to walk the beaches this weekend and discourage folks who are not social distancing properly. And it's true that we don't have any control over the high tide line. So that's an issue. I don't know, perhaps I could mention to Mimi that the policeman could also ask for some sort of indication whether it's a Fisher's person or not, because I do think that the people who are not Fisher's people, they have no skin in the game. So it is less likely that they may be as respectful about distancing. And last week was graduation, so I think that graduation here on Fisher's, so I think that might have added to last weekend's density. But I do know that there are a lot of kids in a variety of groups who are self-policing quite well. So I don't know what else to tell you other than that. I don't know anything other than that.
Audrey, I talked with Mimi. I had a good talk with her yesterday as well, and I know Susie had some emails back and forth with her, and I think having the trooper show up will help. I think having a little more vigilance at the gatehouse will help. I do know that there are significantly less guest passes.
50% less.
Right. I was
50% less
right.
than this time last year.
Right. So if they're not either coming by boat or they're either coming by boat or they're coming with a resident in a resident's car, or they're walking on, because they're just not, the guest passes are way down.
Yeah, it doesn't support that line of inquiry at all.
Correct.
Willard?
Yep.
I know we don't want to prolong this conversation very long, but I really don't know, but I'm wondering if it would help for a summer beach etiquette this summer to ask people to limit their time on the beach. If you're spending the whole afternoon there, clearly, I mean, I know people who drove to both beaches this weekend and saw all the cars and just knew they couldn't possibly go and have room and be safe. So if families are staying for 3 or 4 hours, that means other families aren't getting any of the beach at all that weekend. And I wonder if shortening the amount of time that we stay would enable more people to use it and mean less overcrowding.
I think that's a great idea, and maybe the ICB can send a note to FIDCO suggesting that. And who manages the Dock Beach? It's the IPP.
IPP.
Yep, IPP.
I think that's a great idea. Are there any other questions on any topic relative to the COVID-19, or questions of Chris from the IHP? we put them on the, please send them on the chat room to either Candy or myself.
I do have a question if we're ready to go ahead.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so Chris, I think this is a question for you. Somebody is asking why, if visitors have to take a test before they come, and let's say they turn out to be negative, there's the impression that they still have to quarantine even if the test is negative. Is that correct?
They need to quarantine waiting for the test to return. We've decided to kind of as a community that we're willing to live with the risk that is associated with the test. We know that the test won't necessarily pick up an infection in the early stages of it. And so, you know, that's something we just decided that we're going to live with. So there's not quarantining after the test. There's just the normal, what we consider normal now, social distancing and interacting only within one's cohort.
Well, but Chris, if you are one of the people arriving at the island from Florida or one of the states that New York has said, I don't think that the test gets you out of the quarantine.
It doesn't.
Absolutely, I'm afraid that's true. There's not a provision in the directive from the state for like an alternate strategy of testing or quarantining and the testing, or a reduced quarantine period.
So,
I mean, I'm afraid that's just the case, and as difficult as that is, I think that's something that we're going to have to live with.
but one follow-on question to that: if a person comes from Florida and comes to the island prepared to abide by the 14-day quarantine as the New York State requires, shouldn't they also go back and get tested? Wouldn't you like to know, even though it doesn't relieve them from the quarantine, wouldn't you like to know as soon as possible if they're positive?
Right. So what we are asking everybody is to nevertheless, if you're coming from those regions, to get tested like everyone else before. And
Okay.
the logic behind this is that, you know, often quarantining is not perfect. Often a family may need services on an emergency basis. It makes those of us who are providing those services far more comfortable knowing that at least there's a negative test.
Yeah, I agree with that policy. When one of my relatives asked about that for my brother who's coming from Florida, they said that your office wouldn't schedule a test for him. So I'm pleased to hear they will.
Absolutely. It's, you know, from our standpoint, that's just kind of rock bottom baseline for the call.
Great.
Candy, you have any other questions?
Not at the moment.
I would just mention to Dave, as the representative from the club on, and I think maybe we'll ask at our next meeting to get an update from the yacht club as well and from Hay Harbor. But I've got a lot of comments to me directly about the guest policy at the club, and that it's one thing, Dave, the theme of the questions is, okay, it's one thing to have guests on the golf course because they can socially distance, but which some people agree with and some people think we shouldn't have guests still. But allowing guests to come and eat at the club, even though the tables are socially distanced, people are thinking that that's not a great idea. So I'm just giving you some feedback. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm just reading some chats that have been sent to me. And I know that people are sensitive about guests because it takes away from members' abilities to use the facilities. But I know that guests are important because it helps the company, the club financially. So anyway, that's something that maybe you or Peter or someone would be willing to talk about at our meeting at our next meeting on the 14th, unless we have one next week, which I think we will not.
Willard,
yeah.
Willard, it's Peter Lawrence.
Hey, Peter.
I can confirm that guests are not allowed at dinner unless they have either quarantined on the island for 14 days or received a negative COVID test.
Okay, that's great, because clearly that's not what some people chatting to me or thought was the case. So that's great to hear.
I
And
think if you look at my most recent letter, you'll notice that's what was stated and what our recent document rules.
that's what I thought. That's what I thought. So
Right.
I didn't want to speak for you, but thank you very much.
Right. Sorry, I was late to this call. Just arrived.
That's okay. So that clarifies that. Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Let me just see. Okay, so the question is now, this one individual does not believe that that they're being checked or people are abiding by it. So I'm just giving you that feedback, and I'm going to drop the issue. I think we can move on to other things. We will also look on the 14th from a report from VGEL and the student group on how well we've done with the Instagram program and with getting older teenagers on the census. They've shown interest, which is great, and we think if we can get a couple of hundred of them signed up, then they'll cause their friends to get signed up as well. So that's the goal over the next 2 weeks. Any other questions? Let me just go through the list here. Mimi Gary's not on the call because she had to be she had a conflict about the reopening of her school. Otherwise, she would be on. I forgot to mention that. Candy, do you have any questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Okay, so
we just got one question. How often is the census being sent? It just came out. So it's supposed to be sent on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays.
Right.
Meaning the symptom tracker, not the census.
Yeah.
The symptom
Oh,
tracker.
sorry. Yes, I misread that. The symptom tracker is being sent on Monday, Wednesday. The census is not being sent.
No.
You just sign up for the census.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining. We said we promised it would be short. I think we made it short, and I think we made it informative. We will meet on the 14th, and I am going to pre-warned as pre-armed. I'm guessing that meeting could run over an hour because we have a number of things we need to cover at that meeting. All right. Stay safe. Have a happy 4th of July.
Thanks, Willard.
Thank you.
Thanks, Willard.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Willard.
Thanks, Willard. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Willard.
Thank you, Willard.
Thanks.